Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of ISV Success Live. My name is Brian Galicia, and I lead our Dynamics 365 ISV business here at Microsoft. And it's an honor and pleasure to have Chris Maddox from DocuSign join me as the special guest today. Before we get started, though, I wanted to just orient people who've never maybe come across these ISV Success Live series before. We do these events every Monday at 8 o'clock West Coast time to really showcase and highlight our amazing Dynamics 365 ecosystem. And DocuSign, of course, is one of those amazing partners that drives amazing value, not just for what you saw in the video for signature. And I'm sure everyone who has ever bought something like a house or signed something, I'm pretty confident you've probably used DocuSign solutions. The other is we're going to talk about areas where you might be not thinking about DocuSign. You saw kind of that visual, which I really love, which is kind of what we call agreements or contracts. One of those things that's another innovation that DocuSign is leading, one of the leaders in that space as well, that Chris and I are going to talk about a little bit on how that evolution has occurred with Microsoft. So during the event, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. Either you're watching live, somewhere on the West Coast, like Chris is in the Bay Area. I'm here in Seattle. If you're watching from somewhere around the world, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. So you just want to type in the LinkedIn comments. The location where you're watching from, we'll do a quick shout out towards the beginning to just thank you for making the time. The second is if you ever actually have a question that you want me to ask Chris during the event, towards the end of the conversation, we probably will have time for where I can ask one question of Chris if you have one. So if you want to put in the comments as you're watching, feel free to do so. And then finally, as we're having the conversation, if you just want to utilize one of the little emoji icons, support, like, etc., that gives Chris and I an understanding that the information is resonating to the people watching live or during the replay. So Chris, thank you so much for making the time on a Monday morning to join me. Why don't you describe a little bit to the folks listening, what is your specific role at DocuSign? And then what is one thing, one of the great icebreaker questions I ask is, what is one of the things not on your LinkedIn profile that you're open to sharing?
Good morning, Brian. Thanks for having me. My role at DocuSign is Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. What that means at DocuSign is focused on how do we actually engage our most strategic partners, Microsoft obviously being one of them, to help drive value and success with customers. And specifically, we have a mantra at DocuSign is meet people where they work. And so we'll talk a bit about integrations today and some of that. Let's see, one thing not on my LinkedIn profile. In between jobs in 2011, I had just left Europe, where I was running European operations for a software company, and was on a journey to start my own company in 2012. But I took a year off, decided to go ride. I live in Marin, so I'm always on my bike riding. And I participated in a Pro-Am event in France. Think about it as a Tour de France style event for 3 days, not 21 days, but 3 days. I rode up Alpe d'Huez, the famous Alpe d'Huez, alongside Carlos Sastre, who was the 2008 winner of the Tour de France.
Wow.
In fact, he won the Tour de France on that very mountain. Needless to say, I wasn't talking. He was talking, and I was just riding, but it was a great time. We had a lot of fun. So that's a bit about me.
I love it, Chris. Man, I can't imagine, because I'm probably not as a in-depth bike rider as you, but of course I've run my fair share of hills. And to your point, I can't imagine someone trying to go up, and you can imagine those people who do Tour de France, they can easily just have a conversation because they're so in shape. And then you're like, I'm just a novice trying to just get up the hill. One thing I'll ask you is, what is your favorite, what bike do you actually have? Is it a Specialized? Is it a Trek? Like, what is the bike or bikes? Because I know people who are bike connoisseurs, they actually have more than one bike. So what is your bike that you actually use?
Yeah, the question is what day is it? So
what day is it?
I have a full suspension mountain bike ride. It's a Pivot. I run that in the single track hills here in Marin. I have an Australian, my wife's Australian, so I have an Australian bike called Curve. It's a titanium gravel bike. And then I have a custom built Independent Fabrications road bike. They're based out of Massachusetts. So
Wow. I love it. I've never heard. I mean, I love it because I know that there's so many bike manufacturers out there that do an amazing job. I guess, are any of those bikes electric yet? Do you have an electric or assisted power assisted?
I've held off, but I ride my 4-year-old daughter on the hills, which gets a little challenging. So I'm starting to think about it.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to do a quick shout out for people watching, and thank you everyone for watching live. So Jill, thank you so much from watching from Minneapolis. I appreciate it, or we appreciate it. Suresh, I love it. Yes, my legs hurt just listening to the story. I love that comment. And then Rob, thank you so much. Cannondale. So of course that is a very famous, really good one. So Rob, thank you so much. So let's just get started, Chris. Let's just dive in. So you think about DocuSign, and again, I kind of tease that out. I mean, hopefully most people have heard about DocuSign, but maybe you could talk about a little bit more detail, Chris. What is the business outcomes? What are some of the scenarios? Because of course, people know DocuSign is e-signature, but it's much more than that. So maybe you can describe a little bit in the next few minutes, just some of the business outcomes that you drive with Microsoft.
Yeah, certainly. So we our new tagline is Leader in Agreement AI. Obviously, you know us as the eSign vendor, but we're also the leader in CLM, which is contract lifecycle management. How do we actually take an agreement from inception all the way through signature and management of the entire process? In fact, we've recently received that distinction by Gartner for the 4th year in a row as the leader in CLM on their MQ. We've also expanded that capability to include advanced security and identity solutions, especially meeting certain regulatory and industry demands as they need it. Think EMEA in Germany has very specific demand requirements regarding identity, especially for EU signatures. Healthcare, very specific in that space as well, especially around patient onboarding. The focus is to really create everything you need to agree, easily send, sign, and manage those contracts in one place. Now, we spent a lot of time with Microsoft over the years, and with that comes a renewed understanding of how do we actually live and appear where people work. So we have integrations across Word, Outlook, Teams, Dynamics, SharePoint, Power Platform. You get the picture, right? We're trying to meet Microsoft customers where they work. We're also leveraging a couple interesting services, Azure services under the covers, Azure AI and cognitive services to augment our own DocuSign AI to bring smarter agreements to the forefront, including agreement summarizations, contextual extraction, semantic search. Further, we've been working very closely with Microsoft on Sales Copilot and M365 Copilot to bring agreement summarizations, agreement status, agreement generation directly into this Copilot. So think about I'm a seller, and I'm going to meet with the customer. Sales Copilot can actually assist me in understanding what contract do I have with them, what are the requirements that I have for meeting the SLAs for that customer. Am I meeting those? Information doesn't live solely within the contract itself or the agreement itself. It lives within the services that Microsoft provides as part of Dynamics. So what we're trying to do is actually bring together the contextual information around a relationship with the customer and align it with their core agreement, and usually it's multiple agreements, to ensure that we're properly servicing our customers.
Yeah, what a great intro, Chris. Because I mean the partnership, and that's going to be a good lead into our next question. But the way that you articulate this end-to-end scenario, how you're maximizing the various areas in the Microsoft Cloud to add value to an end customer is amazing. And I love your Copilot example, because that's truly what it's about. That next version of outcome is going to be something in context to where a person is working, whether they're in Teams, they're in Outlook, maybe they're in the native UI of a solution. Taking advantage of those things end to end is amazing. And the one thing that we've talked about over the past few weeks, because we spent a little bit of time together at your partner conference, you came to Microsoft at a recent partner advisory council. And I think one of the amazing things that DocuSign has done is that not only you on the space where, of course, people know you initially, which is the signature side, but then you've taken agreements and you've put it together where you have what you just articulated, this end-to-end scenario, so that if I'm in a sales process and trying to go and drive a scenario to drive the ultimate outcome, which is signing a contract, you have that end-to-end with a combination of Microsoft and DocuSign, which I love. So before we get to the next question, there's a few other people that showed up live, so I wanted to do a quick shout out. So Nazim, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you so much. I'm not sure where you're watching from, but thank you. And then Shika, I know sometimes LinkedIn does this where it doesn't show your name, but I do want to acknowledge that. Thank you, Shika, for making the time. It's good to see you, and I appreciate you making the time to listen to this conversation with Chris and I. So you talk about, Chris, a little bit about just the work that you're doing with Microsoft. Maybe since you've joined, what has that Microsoft partnership experience been like through ISV Success Live or ISV Success, but also just the innovation we're working together, because it is a journey. These things that we do together does not magically happen overnight, because the technology, it takes time to actually understand it and then figure out what's the best way to not only drive the scenario, but also then how do we package that up so it adds value to both sides of the coin. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the partnership and what the journey has been like for you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Look, Microsoft is one of those unique hyperscaler partners that has based much of your go-to-market motion focused with partners. And so you have a lot available to the ecosystem. Previously, the company I started, we were funded by M12, and we spent a lot of time within that ecosystem. DocuSign is taking advantage of that in a number of ways. One is we're a preferred solution on Microsoft AppSource. So it's a way for customers to be able to actually very easily get access to our solutions. We recently launched on Azure Marketplace. Obviously, Marketplace is a phenomenal way for customers to leverage the things that they're doing, and then layer in core technologies that can actually augment and accelerate their use cases. We've collaborated more across the product side of the house. In fact, our CTO came from Microsoft over 20 years in that space. And so for the product side, we've established direct line and communication between the product teams and the core development organizations. Obviously, I talked about Sales Copilot. That's we're very early as a lighthouse partner there. A lot more to come on that side. Obviously, everything that Microsoft is talking about has everything to do with AI and Copilot. On the go-to-market side, we've actually increased our exposure and access to clients, and specifically mutual clients, by engaging with sales leaders and marketers in the field. You called it out earlier. Most of us have used DocuSign in one way or another, just to sign. What we're finding is that there are a plethora of opportunities at an existing client where they're going through transformation, some digital transformation. I talked about the patient onboarding for the life sciences side of the house, employee onboarding, right? That's a process that can be streamlined as well, and Microsoft is helping do that. So that we spent a lot of time collaborating with the Microsoft team to ensure that we're fitting appropriately in the appropriate technologies. So Biz Apps, Azure, the AI teams, and of course, our partner community like you, Brian, has been fantastic in getting the conversation in front of the client at the right time.
Yeah, well said, Chris. And one of the things, it was great when I was at your DocuSign partner event a few weeks ago, and Janine, who leads the partnership side across the board within DocuSign, said it super well, which you resonated as well, which is it's partner engagement, a very deeper interaction that DocuSign is doing with partners like us at Microsoft. And we truly appreciate that, because DocuSign, you're spot on. You're taking and making the investments across the various areas of Microsoft Cloud, not just Azure, not just Dynamics, not just Microsoft 365, but also now you've taken on AI and Copilot scenarios to really provide the end-to-end value to what you just said, which is meeting the customer where they need it. And I love just the end-to-end experience, because the industry use cases that exist with agreements or signature spans the board. And of course, there are things, of course, when I was there at your event in Chicago, I met a number of partners in the real estate business, because you can imagine that use case scenario is very broad and wide. Because imagine when you do a close of a house, and the early days before you had a signature, it was like old school. That video was spot on, where you're trying to sign something, you stuck it in an envelope with sign here, sign here, sign here. And now it's just streamlined into a digital experience, and you're driving that end through across the agreement side. So it's
and Brian, it's a data-driven experience, right? It's not about
Yes.
documents, right? It is about the data that's underlying. That's what we care about as consumers. That's what we care about as businesses. And think about exposing that data to our various processes, especially within the Microsoft ecosystem. You can start to trigger off other services and other capability to, one, reduce risk for the organization, and then two, increase customer satisfaction as you engage with someone.
Yeah, and that's a great comment, Chris, because just what I learned, what I continue to learn in the innovation we're doing, is taking all those data points and servicing it up so that it's relevant at the time that someone needs to go through, do something through that business process of an agreement to signing. That's spot on. So before we do the next question, again, I love the fact that there's engagement and people are commenting where they're watching from. So I apologize, Rion, or again, I'm terrible at pronouncing names, but thank you so watching for wherever you're watching from. I love it, Sarah, from watching from San Diego from her bike. So stay safe out there. It's great that you have your ear pods or something in your ears, listening to the story between Chris and I's conversation. And then one more, Dominic. Thank you so much from Germany. We truly appreciate you making the time to listen to learn more. So one of my favorite questions, Chris, is just like, what are the customer stories that you've been exposed to that really showcases some of this innovation and business outcomes that you talked about? Because DocuSign spans the industries, and maybe you can just pick out a few of your favorite, or one of your favorite ones that kind of talks about some of the end-to-end scenarios that we're doing together.
Yeah, we mentioned a bit about employee onboarding. We mentioned a little bit about life sciences. Here's one in an industry you really don't think of much. A company called Consor. They're an environmental engineering and consulting firm. So they do water-related engineering work as part of things like hurricane relief or emergency repair scenarios. So you have a natural disaster somewhere, they can come in and help with the water-related engineering work to ensure that we still get clean, available drinking water, as an example. Their problem statement is they typically have somewhere between 30 and 40 contracts that they have to execute for every project they work on. So imagine the contract preparation that they have to do, and then of course the execution of the deals that they're doing with the local governments, with the local businesses. That process that they took to actually initiate the contracts and go from draft to sign is obviously particularly important for time-sensitive scenarios like hurricane relief or other emergency projects. And so DocuSign and Microsoft collaborated with the customer to ensure that we were building out the right interactions, that they were leveraged in the key moments of the contracting process. Our contract team, project managers, other stakeholders at Consor can now manage that entire life cycle of the contract without ever needing to leave the Microsoft platform. We have integration into Word, where agreements can be generated in Word. They can be securely routed to the right people in the right order, obviously, across Outlook. And then when they're completed, they're stored in SharePoint. So the result is, as example, is they recently executed a large contract in Florida, about 35 different supporting vendors. So as you would imagine, it's extremely complex. The intricacies of very specific requirements for each vendor needed to be understood, prepared, negotiated, and executed for all those agreements. Typically, that would take them months. They were able to actually complete it in just 5 days. right? And so the speed at which they could do it, the accuracy at which they could do it, and now they have an ability to manage that process to ensure that they're actually meeting the SLAs of those customers along the way, or those partners and those vendors are meeting SLAs to them along the way. So again, it's more than just the signature; it's the ability to manage the entire life cycle, understand the data that's in it, and then drive decisions along the way.
Yeah, Chris, I love the story itself and the use case, because the way you articulated that use case about this this water company that's doing these complex things is a very strong example of the various areas that you guys can get plugged into. And I want to call out one specifically because you talked about the process of routing it to the right people in the right order. And you touched on it, and that's where, again, taking advantage of the Microsoft cloud, you're leveraging some of those components, not just with native DocuSign scenarios, but you're also taking advantage of the scenarios on the Power Platform with what we refer to as Power Automate and routing those things. So based upon the data, and again, going back into, I love that your comment is it's about the data. When the data surfaces up to say, hey, this is where it needs to go, in the order it needs to go in, and the place it needs to go afterwards when these things happen, how do you make that work? And I think one of those things that we do so well together is using and taking advantage of that technology that then wraps into AI. And that's one of the most exciting things that I think is upcoming is taking that data. And that's why I learned a lot at your partner event too, is that the amount of things that DocuSign is doing to use generative AI to embed that into the process of the data to then do something with that to ensure we're giving the right information and seeding the right information and value to that customer is pretty amazing.
Agreements are no longer static.
Yes.
Right. All right. They have to live within the ecosystem and the business process that you build. And you need a system or a combination of systems to help you manage those agreements in real time. Otherwise, we continue to be exposed to risk, or we lose opportunities to drive value.
Yeah. Well said. I love it. And I also didn't, I missed the fact to make the comment of how you talked about how joint customers of ours can get, see that value on the places where we're exposing DocuSign in our marketplaces, not just on AppSource to be discovered in the business process or the Dynamics world, but of course on Azure as well, where it is a transactable solution where DocuSign can have a private offer and be able to go do that and drive that in value to a customer. Because again, one of the things that's amazing about what DocuSign is doing is taking advantage of the innovation that we're providing to our partners and end customers, not just with AI and Copilot, but the ability to do and transact things on Marketplace. So it's a good segue into our final question, Chris, is how do people learn more? Of course, we're on LinkedIn. And so definitely if you're watching this either live or replay, encourage you to get connected with Chris because, of course, Chris leads the strategic partnership team, works closely with our team. So maybe you could talk about, Chris, like how do people learn more, whether you're a Microsoft seller, you're a potential partner, a SI going, oh, I now unpack more that I didn't realize that DocuSign did. And then maybe and customers that come across this, what are some of the next steps that you would recommend people do?
Yeah, certainly, Brian. I think the first point to make is we have Ignite around the corner. Ignite 2023 is the second week in November in Seattle and online. We'll have a booth there, so come visit us in the expert meetup section there. We're also going to have a digital booth, so you can obviously learn a lot more there. We have a number of customer presentations. I do believe we're also going to have the consort use cases at customer presentation while we're there. You can come visit our webpage at DocuSign.com/integrations/Microsoft. You'll learn about all the integrations we have across the Microsoft portfolio. We also have a blog, the benefits of using DocuSign with Microsoft apps. I will post that on my LinkedIn profile so you can see it there. And of course, you can come see me at LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'm going to flash one more up here. This actually goes to the Dynamics listing in AppSource. So aka.ms/DocuSign is another great spot to go. So As we wrap up, Chris, any last parting words or thoughts? And I love how you made the comment on Ignite, because again, I encourage all of you, anyone who is going to Ignite, especially in person, definitely encourage you to swing by and meet the DocuSign team and to learn a little bit more. But what any other closing comments, Chris, before we go back and showcase that video that we ran at the very beginning?
Yeah, certainly. I think that the last thing I want to bring up, and we've talked about it here and there throughout the broadcast, and if you don't think about AI, then I'm not sure what business you're in. Everyone is looking at AI, and I know it can be often overused, but it is extremely transformative. DocuSign's been using AI underneath the covers of our application for years. What we're doing now is we're augmenting Azure AI, Gen AI, to help actually broaden the way you interact with DocuSign, expand the capabilities and the solutions that we can help solve for beyond just these signatures. I talked about CLM, I talked about identity, and we're continuing to expand that and deepen those integrations with Microsoft. So if you're a Microsoft customer, if you're a Microsoft partner, come find me, let's talk. A lot going on right now.
Yeah, no, I truly appreciate that, Chris. And one of the things that I love about how DocuSign is taking that approach, it's a combination of both sides. And you talked about it at the very beginning with Copilot. Sometimes you have the scenario where you're going to take and ingest the information to make the DocuSign IP super relevant just within your own IP experience, which is fantastic. Then you have the other scenario, which is I'm in a Microsoft property, Microsoft Teams, Dynamics. And how does something pop up? And then how do I take the data? To your point, I love, again, that reinforcement of the data. How do you take the data from DocuSign and surface it up into that moment and experience? And I think stay tuned, because the work that I've observed, and I'm sure you observe as well, is going to be very transformative of just helping a user through that process. And the critical thing is it's Copilot, meaning, or AI. It's someone that is not going to take your job. It's more of someone that is actually helping you be more efficient and provide the level of data at the time you need it through the process. So
yeah, Brian, to that point is we're hoping that gone are the days where I'm going into a critical customer meeting and I have to spend hours reading through the agreements, trying to understand which version is active, which amendment is appropriate, which agreement terms are most appropriate for the customer. I want that summarized for me. If I do it in a Teams or in a Copilot scenario, I now can take action to get the other folks that are working with me on that customer meeting involved as well. So it's about how do I accelerate the value I bring as a person, as a worker in engaging with my customers, not replacing what I do, but augmenting me to be more proficient at my work. So we're super excited about the results that are already showing up for customers, and we're just at the beginning.
Yeah, well said, Chris. And it is super exciting that we're on this journey together. I can't thank you enough for the amazing partnership we have with you and your team. Looking forward to the ongoing partnership of how we're going to grow together, the investment that you've made at Ignite. And so looking forward to seeing you and your teams here. And thank you everyone for watching this event with Chris at DocuSign. Again, as a reminder, we do these events every Monday. We're gonna have another one next week, and you'll see me post who that is later today. But if you want to follow along all the series where we've had DocuSign and even watch this replay and send it around to people either on LinkedIn or the YouTube channel, if you just want to do ISV Success Live, follow the hashtag or aka.ms/ISV Success Live. That will give you this replay that we just are about to complete with Chris and the many other ISVs that we've hosted. It's hard to believe we're on episode 85 because we started this at the beginning of COVID, and truly appreciate amazing partners like DocuSign and Chris making the investment of time. So thanks again, Chris. Have an amazing Monday, and thank you all for watching, and enjoy the video. And thanks again, Chris.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.